Coming up, we're going to check out every single new Blokees Mandalorian figure and try and match them with their best Transformers counterpart. Some of them were kind of easy, but you'll never guess who I chose for the Mandalorian. We're even going to check out the Transformers Mandalorian collab and ask why this stupid thing flies backwards. So if you're ready to judge all of my terrible opinions, let's get started. Burt Reynolds! Blokees has a new license, and it's Star Wars, and I, for one, am pretty excited about this. But of course, this is a Transformers channel first and foremost. Not solely Transformers, but that's our main focus, and I'm not going to stop talking about them in this video. We're going to enjoy Transformers figures, while we also look at the Blokees figures, because I love Transformers, and I love Star Wars too. And after all, can't we make a little room on our shelves for something different every now and then? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the Transformers equivalent of Grogu, IG-11, Din Djarin, Moff Gideon, Boba Fett, the Armor, Incinerator, Stormtrooper, Regular Stormtrooper, and Ahsoka Tano. And I'm also going to look at each one of these figures individually, but I'm probably not going to get this secret Din Djarin. But of course, we're going to talk about Transformers too, so we're going to start with the Star Wars Mandalorian crossover N1 Starfighter. This figure is absolutely incredible, and there's just no shot I would be talking about Blokees Mandalorian figures without talking about the N1 Starfighter, this amazing Star Wars crossover of Transformers figures. It is so cool in both robot and alt modes. We're going to look at both of those now. So once again, of course, we have the N1 Starfighter here, not, of course, the Razor Crest, which admittedly would probably be a trickier ship to be able to transform into a robot. I mean, they have to think about how these things will work in both the alt mode and the robot modes. I mean, they don't always, because remember they gave us the Millennium Falcon and they put no thought into the robot modes on those. That was a disaster. This, on the other hand, is a really cool ship. I think the detailing looks really great. And it's just an impressive figure to hold. The quality is good. You can see the details here. The paint it's aged. You got the chipping here on the paint. The pod for Grogu does open back there. That's pretty cool. And yeah, I'm just trying to justify the premise of this video and show off cool Transformers in the process. So that's what we're doing. Am I the only one, when it first was repaired and took off, I really thought it was going to go this way because I grew up on Y wings and I feels like it should fly this way, but it doesn't. It flies this way, and that'll always feel backwards to me. So we do a quick transformation. Of course, you saw a minute ago, this pops off and this comes off, and this becomes a nice little blaster for the Mandalorian. And this, of course, is Grogu's pod right here. I know a lot of folks are so desperate for blast effects that sometimes they'll buy figures just for blast effects. Well, you get quite a few with this. You have his weapon right here, his blaster, and there's something really cool about the figure I'll show you in just a minute that goes with that. And then, of course, you have a stand here that will come apart and also transform into a shield that he can use, and his cape. So he can hold this as a shield, he can use this as a cape. But anyway, to do the transformation process, it's not too tricky. We want to open these back parts first, and then we want to clip this off the side of the wings on both sides. I'll try not to hit the phone too much. And then these can go back like this. His head can pop out. While we're here, we can twist the arms around a bit. These are unfortunately going to be his shoulders. I'm trying to make sure I keep this in screen. Okay, so this will come back and meet together here like this. And then these will fold this way, I believe. Yes, they'll fold in like that. I think that's accurate. We'll have to double check. And so this is where it gets kind of tricky. I think this comes up. These bits fold in like this, which will go in here. And then you have to do a little bit of twisting and turning to get this part around and down, folded down. So this will now clip into place. And then for the legs, and boy, these legs look familiar. I'm not gonna dig them out, but some of the old, I remember like the Obi-Wan Transformer crossover had very similar legs to these. But regardless, you just kind of got to pull them apart. And I believe we will, oh yeah, okay, so we have to fold this bit out from here. We'll fold this bit out like that, and then bring it out like that. And then now we can bring this down, and you'll want to twist this down, snap it into place, turn it this way, push it in, turn the foot around, and then you have one leg done. Same thing on the other side. This isn't a complete how-to on the transformation process. I'm just trying to give you the idea of it. This is one of those forgettable moments in the transformation, but on the chest piece, we need this piece popped out. So I'm going to see if I can twist it around. There we go. So we can get to it, get it to pop out properly there. Now we can bring it back up and push that all into place. And then standard sort of hand situations. Bring those out. So here we have the robot mode for the Mandalorian, and it's certainly probably the weaker of the two modes because these shoulders, these peaks on these shoulders won't even come in the shot as I have it. So, you know, they're way too big. Just a point of clarification, when I transform it, you can actually make kind of a fun jetpack out of his, the wings on the back here. So that looks pretty cool. The waist swivel's way too loose on this guy. But the thing I love the most about him has to be that he actually has a little holster for his gun. And I don't know why, but I just think that's the coolest thing. So his gun will go right in there just like that. And it is a space western at the end of the day, of course, the Mandalorian. So it's kind of fun that he can actually store his weapon right there. I think that's pretty cool. And of course, for the accessories, the stand can be converted and this can pin into the back to give him a cape. I mean, it's kind of a weird sort of course, Inner John vibe cape, but you know, he is a transformer version of a Mandalorian, so I suppose that's fine. And as for the pod, that's the intended suggested way to store that or to show off that is to take one of the blast effects and stick them onto the stand, kind of like that. And then the pod has these two little tabs that will tab into the top of the stand like that. And then of course, if you're not using this as a shield, which is kind of silly, but he can hold that as a shield, you can stick that back into the stand and you have a nice little stand display for the pod, which of course they didn't come with a Baby Yoda, so that's kind of a bummer. But as you can see, it can open and close, so there is room for it. We just need one that fits. So that's why I'm hoping the Blokees Baby Yoda will actually fit into it. But regardless, of course, this also becomes a blaster. You can pull this out, like I said, and he can hold this, and this gives him kind of a fun, larger weapon, like so. And then, of course, you have plenty of blast effects that mostly make more sense in the alt mode. But anyway, that is the Mandalorian Transformers figure. It's definitely kind of a C. Is about the highest grade I'm going to give for this figure, certainly the robot mode. But the alt mode, the N1 Starfighter mode, is actually really cool. And again, I do want to check once we've gone through the Blokees, once we get the Baby Yoda, to see if he will actually fit in here. See if the Blokees will actually provide what we need for this, which is a little Baby Yoda. Now to the main premise of this video, and that is pairing all of these wonderful Blokees Mandalorian figures with Transformers counterparts. And I'm going to start out with Stormtrooper, which I think is an absolutely incredible figure. The design, the detail, everything about this figure is absolutely fantastic. The posability, I was really surprised, honestly. I don't collect a lot of action figures these days, but I was surprised how good these are. I was also surprised at how balanced they were. They each come with these stands, of course, but you don't need this stand for this guy to stand up. And that kind of surprised me. Again, I'm used to figures I picked up recently or my sons have picked up, and they just don't stand very well. You almost always need stands. But these figures stand great. They're well balanced, and they're just a lot of fun to pose with or without the included stands. But thinking about the purpose Stormtroopers serve in the larger Star Wars universe and, of course, Mandalorian, and looking at my shelf to try and find a good counterpart, it was pretty easy for me to ultimately land on this figure, and that would be the Transformers Devastation Ground Soldier. Both of these guys, of course, serve as the frontline troops for larger, more devastating forces. They will attack you en masse, but they are fairly disciplined and, of course, visually uniform. Stormtroopers, of course, do rely on sheer numbers and blasters, while ground soldiers, of course, bring brute mechanical strength and advanced Cybertronian weaponry. But of course, the ground soldiers do have the extra ability to transform into pretty awesome vehicles. So we'll quickly take a look at the alt mode for ground soldiers, and it is pretty impressive. It looks like some sort of 80s supercar, and I absolutely love this mode. I think this is the Earthrise Run Amok mode, but I could be wrong about that. Regardless, I love the blue and orange, the cell shading on the windows, and I think this thing would be an absolute perfect match. I could see Stormtrooper when he's off duty hopping into this vehicle and cruising down to the 7-Eleven for some slushies, and I've totally lost the point here, but these are toys and I'm having a lot of fun. Let's move on. And before we jump to the next figure, just a quick pause to note that I'm just having fun using my limited knowledge and memories of Mandalorian, connecting them to the Transformers figures. There could be way better answers, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments on any of these. I just think this is a lot of fun. So we're going to now move to the Incinerator Stormtrooper, which is an absolutely incredible figure. The flames shooting out of that flamethrower look absolutely incredible, and there's such a fun reminder of that badass scene when this guy shows up in the first season. I'm so glad Blokees made this figure. And of course, he's got a role with Megatronus. Now, they're not like soulmates. There's definitely Stormtrooper versus leader. But I can imagine before Megatronus comes into the room or before he's ready to fight, I can totally see an army of Incinerator Stormtroopers just leading the way and just burning up everything in their path before this guy steps in. I think it's a very fun companion piece. And I appreciate Blocky sending me the box of these figures, but I definitely want to pick up a few more of these Incinerator Stormtroopers. And I think on my shelf, I might just have these guys just lined up in front of Megatronus. With that flame coming out, everything, they're just a perfect match. They've got the canisters there on the back. All the details are so incredible. And I would love to have 3 or 4 of these guys standing around in front of Megatronus. I think that would just look so cool. And yes, they would look equally good standing around his take mode as well. And I probably should have done it, but I just don't have the time. I want to keep moving. So we're going to jump ahead to our next figure, but I love this guy. Next up on the list, we have another incredible character and an even more incredible figure from Blockies, and that is the Armorer. Now, this figure looks amazing. The detail, the boots, the skirt, the animal skin, the fur, the cape, the gold helmet, everything looks incredible. And of course, as I think back on the armor, being a leader and also a craftsman who forged Mandalorian armor and was kind of a spiritual leader for the Mandalorian, for me, it was pretty easy to make the connection to Solus Prime. Solus Prime, of course, is one of the original 13 Primes, and she is also the creator of the first weapons and artifacts for the Transformers. The figure itself has actually grown on me quite a bit. When I first got it, I had a lot of trouble transforming it, and pieces fell apart. But now I've really come to love Solus Prime as a figure, and as I learn more about her as a character. And again, having this strong spiritual leader and female character in the Transformers, to me, she matched up so well with the armorer from The Mandalorian. And so I think this is a pretty strong matchup. But tell me, what do you think? Who would you match with the armorer from The Mandalorian? And I know I said this figure is growing on me, and it is, but I tried to do a transformation of this thing for just a quick shot of the alt mode, and pieces just kept flying off. You cannot transform her quickly. You have to take your time. So, oh well, we're going to move on. But again, take your time and it'll be just fine. Okay, next up, and I'm going to be saying this a lot, is another excellent figure in Ahsoka Tano. Absolutely loved her character in The Mandalorian. Our favorite hack and slash badass, fiercely independent, feared, and a very tough fighter wielding those dual sabers, which they have as clear plastic here. I guess you could modify them however you want, but the choice for them is to just make them clear. I don't remember if she was blue or green, and I'm sorry, nerds, that I don't remember the color offhand. But regardless, the figure and the detail are absolutely incredible, as you can see. And just like all the others, she's well balanced. She comes with a stand, but she would absolutely stand on her own just fine. But when I had to think about her character in the Transformers world, for me, it had to be RC from Transformers Prime. Both of these characters are very strong willed and independent. They're natural leaders, and they have learned how to temper their emotions over time. Not to be too much of a stereotype, but the fact is they were both dealing with loss. For Ahsoka Tano, it was Anakin, and of course for RC, it was Cliffjumper, RIP Cliffjumper in that first episode. But these two characters, I think, are a wonderful match because of how much I love each one of them, and the figures are just as cool. RC from Transformers Prime has to be one of my favorite figures, my favorite variations of RC. I absolutely love this figure. I love actually collecting the Transformers Prime figures. But again, getting off track, I think she is a wonderful connection, a wonderful matchup with Ahsoka Tano. Two incredible characters from two different universes. Moving on, and I had a lot of fun trying to come up with a matchup for this guy. We're going to talk about IG-11, who, of course, in the Mandalorian series, as I remember it, started out as a pretty ruthless bounty hunter and was actually out to get Grogu. Now, this figure looks absolutely incredible. He's very thin, but very accurate, very detailed. I love the face on this guy. And of course, he has the two weapons. He's an absolute incredible character. And of course, remember, Din destroyed IG-11, then he was reprogrammed to be a protector and caretaker for Grogu. So, thinking about a connection, I came up with the weird choice of Cogman from The Last Night. Yes, I know, everyone's absolute favorite Transformers movie. Well, put that aside. Cogman was a very small as well figure. He was actually human sized, and he was a caretaker, and he was very cold and polite, and also had a weird, funny, dry sense of humor, as did IG-11, voiced by Taika Waititi, I think, right? But anyway, he was also could be terrifying and quite powerful. And above all that, I think they just look good together. Now, that's not the case for all these figures, but IG-11, I think, shares a lot of similar qualities and appearances to Cogman, and I absolutely think these two guys could roll together just fine. Again, they both brought a little bit of humor to the show, but mostly as well, they could be fierce fighters and, of course, caretakers. And so that was a connection for me that I thought was a lot of fun. But you let me know what you think. And of course, Cogman doesn't transform in the movie, but his studio series figure does transform into this pretty sweet ride. And he's actually a headmaster as well, so his head pulls off and becomes a tiny little rider that you can fit inside the car. Which, and sorry, I didn't have it fully transformed here. That piece needs to snap to the back, but I wasn't going to try to mess with it and break it. Anyway, his head comes off and makes a small little figure that you can actually put inside the car. You can see right there. You just have to pull the top up, and he will sit in there on the right hand side, of course, because it is a British vehicle. And it's just certainly my favorite figure from the Last Night series, because there aren't a lot that I probably love from the Last Night. But this studio series figure of Cogman, I absolutely love. And I think he is a pretty excellent matchup to IG-11. So if I haven't done so already, this next one is probably going to get me in trouble with people who are way more up on the lore for these characters than I am. But anyway, we have Gideon here. I'm sorry, Moff Gideon. And an absolute season one badass this guy was. He, of course, murdered a bunch of Mandalorian back in the day and was trying to seek power himself and rule everything. He wanted Grogu's blood, and he had this, I believe this is the electro saber or electro staff he has here, which he wielded quite well in the show. Um, so anyway, the figure looks great. Obviously, the slight bit of red on the black, the detailing. And again, I'm just describing Moff Gideon because it's so accurate to the character in the show, and it just looks incredible. But anyway, to talk about who I wanted to match him up with, thinking about how powerful this guy was, and thinking about the lore he had, for me, I don't know why, but I really just thought of Cyberverse Tarn. Now, this, of course, is a very specific Tarn from the Cyberverse cartoon. This, by the way, is the figure that came out of the 4-pack. Anyway, Tarn, of course, has a whole different universe jumping, one arm sort of badass story that doesn't necessarily line up exactly with Moff Gideon. But again, the figure has two arms. He only had one, but isn't that kind of a Star Wars theme to have, lost one arm or at least one hand? But anyway, that's besides the point. Tarn is a very powerful, tough figure that was kind of playing both sides a bit. And ultimately, they had this amazing battle in the end of the show that quite really reminded me of the sort of final battle with Moff Gideon, when in both instances, in both battles, you have a surprise show up at the end that kind of changes everything. I won't spoil either one of those shows, but I thought about how they battled so many different characters at once and held their own really well. And then you had this other person or thing come in to change the fight. Anyway, this Tarn figure is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I think he's my preferred Tarn. It's from the Legacy line, right? And again, he came in that 4-pack that had Cliff Jumper and a couple of other folks. I think Tarn was the best thing out of that pack. I absolutely love this gorgeous figure. I love his blasters, which look very Star Wars Empire. I mean, you got the black and red right there matching up perfectly with Moff Gideon. So maybe partly it's just, oh, sorry, lost his weapon. Maybe partly it's just because they look so well standing together. They both are just badasses. And again, it took a lot of folks to take both of them down. And by the way, we know who took Tarn down in the end, right? Anyway, Two beloved villains, I think, two beloved characters. And so I think that is why these guys match up really well. And man, do I love this Moff Gideon figure. Just another just super hit. And once again, let's show you these guys stand up really well. Look at him balance. I'm not used to this for these sort of style of figures and this size of figures. So Moff Gideon, great figure, and to me, a pretty good matchup with Tarn, but I'm sure there are better ones, and I'm sure you'd be happy to let me know. So drop it in the comments. Anyway, we're going to move on. And next up, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite characters from the original trilogy, and that would be Boba Fett. But of course, we're talking about the Mandalorian era Boba Fett. And doesn't this figure, I know I've said this too much, but it looks so incredible. It is so accurate to the show. And I think Blockies, it's almost kind of easy for them, the way they're put together, to stay pretty accurate to the shows, but they do a great job with it. Anyway, now my Boba Fett, he died in the Sarlacc pit. That's how I've always seen it. That Boba Fett, the original Holy Trilogy version, was one of my childhood heroes. The armor, the mystery, the ship, everything about him was just the definition of cool. But The Mandalorian brought him back with a redemption arc, I suppose, and he's still that same independent, kind of quiet bounty hunter, but now he's kind of working with the good guys, trying to rebuild his reputation and honor, I suppose, as the story goes. And that's what makes this next comparison interesting for me, because the Transformer that reminds me the most of Mandalorian era Boba Fett, for me, is Autobot Drift from Age of Extinction and The Last Night. And you will notice here that he is still in the packaging. I don't do this. I don't leave my figures in the packaging. This guy is in the packaging because I actually purchased him a couple year Christmases ago for my youngest son. When he was little, was when The Last Night came out, his favorite character was Autobot Drift because he was a Bugatti and he was a really cool sword wielding badass. And so my son liked him for that reason. And I bought him to have one in the box just because it's awesome and for him to keep and remember that sort of youthful love for this character. So I'm not taking him out of the box. And the one we do have that's open is buried somewhere. So we're talking about the box. But that Bugatti, at least for my son, was everything because, kids love cool cars, and he absolutely loved it. Drift, in a way, just like Boba Fett, started off on the wrong side of things. He was a Decepticon who turned good, finding a new path and a new sense of purpose, right? And so this figure, the original mainline deluxe version here, by the way, really captures that samurai warrior spirit. Cool robot mode, incredible Bugatti, like we say, and he just has style. Both Drift and Boba Fett are these sort of stoic, disciplined fighters who still walk their own path while willing to help the others out. They've grown from their mistakes and now they fight with more of a purpose. And if you think about it, both of them have super cool alt modes. Now, of course, Slave One is not an alt mode for Boba Fett. It's what he gets around in, but it's an iconic Star Wars ship. And it was cool to see it again in The Mandalorian. Autobot Drift, of course, is a Bugatti. That's also super cool if you're into those supercars. And, my son certainly was. So, anyway, that's kind of why I put them together. Both of them are just super cool dudes who, if they're in the room, they're the coolest guy in the room. So I think they make a pretty fun pairing, but tell me what you think. Okay, for our penultimate character, we of course have the beloved, the heavily merchandised, amazing cash cow that is Baby Yoda, Grogu. And Blockies did a phenomenal job with this figure. This pod is so cool that he comes in, but of course he does pop out of this pod. So you can have him separately uh, and you can have him in the pod. And look what a great job they did. Is this not just adorable? And by the way, we are going to see if this will fit in the pod of the N1 Starfighter for the Mandalorian Transformer in a minute. But for now, we want to talk about Grogu and try and find a nice Bumblebee representation for him. And for this, I feel like this is the lamest but most obvious choice. I'm going to go with Bumblebee from the Bumblebee movie. Bumblebee in the Bumblebee movie was, of course, created. His character was adorable and he made jokes and he was goofy. And of course, he didn't really communicate, much like Baby Yoda. He was really more bleeps and blops and squeaks and couldn't actually talk. So he has that going for him. And then he has the one character who he cares so much about, Haley Steinfeld, because I don't remember the character's name in the film, and of course Grogu is going to take care of the Mandalorian, Din Djarin. So they have those aspects going for them, and also Bumblebee is on the smaller size of Autobots, but he's still very powerful, as is Grogu. And we see that in the movie. When he has to get tough and fight, he can, but it's almost a surprise when he does, because otherwise he's very gentle, very adorable, and very much just a caring, empathetic sort of character. And again, there's probably a better character that's not as obnoxious as this, but I just had to choose Bumblebee from the Bumblebee movie, because also just the way he gets marketed over the years and sold. Every little kid wants a Bumblebee toy, just like every little kid, when Mandalorian came out, we needed a little baby Yoda. So for that reason, we're pairing these two up, and that's just the way it's got to be. Sorry, Bumblebee. And of course, finally, we have Din Djarin, the Mandalorian himself. And this figure is perfect. I absolutely love what they've done with it. The cape looks cool. Everything is cool. The blue, the shade of brown, this Mandalorian armor, his gun belt, everything just looks absolutely amazing. Is that a gun belt? I don't know. Anyway, his blaster. I love this figure. And once again, they stand up really well. I keep showing this because I'm impressed by it. And I love kind of posing these guys. You've got to do, he does have a cape. So you got to kind of make up for that cape when you're standing him up. But again, with feet like this, I'm always impressed that these guys stand up. I think they just did a great job with that. But of course, pairing up a figure, it took me just a couple minutes to think who I wanted, because recently I saw an episode of G1 Transformers, and this character, their episode, when it occurred, I thought, oh my God, this guy is the Transformers Mandalorian as far as I'm concerned. He's a bounty hunter. He kind of does his own thing, but he's just cool as hell. So anyway, without further delay, I'm talking about DevCon. DevCon, and this G1, by the way, DevCon, who has been popping up at your Target lately. It's sort of one of the last legacy figures that ever came out, or maybe they reissued. I don't remember. But anyway, he's the only legacy you still see hanging out in your Targets right now. DevCon, his episode was amazing. They literally first see him in a bar, in this sort of alien space bar. How Star Wars is that? And of course, he comes to the defense of a small little creature called Slizzard. I believe it was a Slizzard, right? And it's found to protect him from some bullies. And he's, of course, hunting down some of the Seekers in the episode. And he reminded me so much of the Mandalorian, especially because by the end of the episode, after he'd helped out the Autobots, he, of course, took off on his own. And he just very much feels like a Mandalorian. And this figure, by the way, is gorgeous. I absolutely love DevCon. I think he's one of my absolute favorite G1 figures. This legacy version of him, it's just beautiful. It's just perfect. I mean, the accuracy is next level for this guy. But like I say, anyway, now without going on too much, he does fly off at the end with Slizzard in tow, and it's just so Boba Fett Grogu. I mean, you can't do any better than that. And so I haven't shown them all, but I want to show his alt mode now, because I think it just looks incredible. It's such a fun ship. And again, they just did such a good job with it. Even the ship is fairly cartoon accurate. So we're going to show that now. So here it is, DevCon's alt mode, and it is absolutely beautiful. And honestly, this looks like if you gave like a coloring book of Star Wars spaceships to a young kid who only had the small pack of crayons that were primary colors, this is what you might get. The blue and the red pop so well on this. I absolutely love DevCon's alt mode. The transformation is fairly simplistic, but it does a good job. And again, it looks pretty show accurate when you see it. So I just absolutely love this ship. The blasters on the front, everything about it is just super cool. And again, it very much has a Star Wars vibe. It feels like something maybe the Mandalorian would fly. What do you think about this figure, this Blokees figure of the Mandalorian? What do you think about all the figures? I think they look absolutely incredible. The sculpts, I want to say sculpts, the detailing on them is just next level, and they're so much fun to pose. So anyway, do you think this was a great matchup or not? You can tell me in the comments. You can tell me what you think about these Blokees figures. And do you do this too? Do you just mix all the different brands, all the different toys, and just have a lot of fun bringing everything in and just letting everything fight everything? What do you think? I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Just looking at them, also kind of know that this thing is obviously not going to close with Baby Yoda in it, but our Blokees Baby Yoda will actually sit there just fine. So while he's not the perfect companion for the Transformers N1 Starfighter, You know, he's not small enough to totally fit down in there. He will sit at the top like this and kind of pop his head out. You can have him there next to the Mandalorian, and it gets the job done. So we have the N1 Starfighter Transformers crossover Mandalorian with little Blokees Grogu there sitting in his pod. And that, for me, works just fine, and that might be a fun way to display those two.